What's up, guys? It's Dorian, and I'm here with the official release of Elementary 5.0 Juno Beta 1. I did a preview video on this before. I'll put a link up here, and it was basically using the daily release repositories to get the latest stuff. And it wasn't an official beta, but to be honest, it's the files they end up using once they're stable anyways, and comparing this, what I'm using now, to what I was using on my Ubuntu base, it's very similar and just as stable, to be honest. So, but saying that, this is the official beta. This is also on hardware, guys. So this is not in a virtual machine. This is installed. I did not install NVIDIA drivers, so I'm only using the Nouveau drivers. Because it's based on Debian, it's based on Ubuntu, 100%. Bumblebee will not work. I cannot do the switchable graphics, so no point in installing them because I won't be gaming on this anyways. Most of the time, I try to be very unbiased on what I'm reviewing, just, give the facts type thing. But Elementary is so focused on their design and everything. And I am going to be a little bit critical about this because they're really forcing themselves to be a specific thing. And that specific thing is, well, Mac. They're really trying to be the Mac of Linux. Everything is a certain way. Everything is all about the looks and simplicity and taking away settings, taking away things that might confuse a user who's not too good with computers. So you could see what I mean by, very similar to Mac. So everything's simple, everything's easy. So to a power user, it can be frustrating because you want to change settings, you want to, change your theme, you want to change different things, you want to tweak your settings, you want to customize everything, but you can't using the GUI. In the terminal, you could do everything you can in Ubuntu and Debian in the terminal, or any other Linux distro, really. But there are some things that might cause you issues. When I first installed Elementary, for example, I did a sudo apt auto remove to clean up some packages, and because I had installed something, I don't remember what it was, and then I uninstalled it, but it removed a ton of fonts that I didn't install, and they weren't a dependency of what I had installed. So I don't know what happened, and I don't know what those fonts were for, but everything seems to be working fine. All the fonts seem to still be nice, so who knows? But anyways, like I said, very Mac-like, but very nice to look at. Now we'll start at the top here. You got your shutdown menu. This is stuff that's still very similar to GNOME because it's based off of the old GNOME code base and customized. They've added the do not disturb and the notification settings, which I will also go through eventually when I go through the system settings, is nice to have. One that I disabled was music because you don't want the little bell going off every time your music player changes songs, and you get the little pop-up notification of what the new song is that's playing, and you get a little bing. You don't need that when you're listening to music, all right? So that's nice to have. Other things here, your power, which has your display brightness, which you can also change with your keyboard shortcuts. Bluetooth, your Wi-Fi, your volume with the built-in music player controls. And now because I'm using OBS and I'm recording audio, the audio is also showing up, and the audio icon also shows up here. I mentioned this before in a previous video that the input volume and the little microphone icon here only show up when you're actually recording or capturing audio. So that's a pretty nice little feature right there. And then you've got your time with a pop-down calendar and your applications. Now, one thing that this is supposed to do, the top bar is supposed to turn black and go solid, which it does. However, in my case, I've found out now that when you're using a dual monitor setup, it doesn't go solid anymore. And this is not just Firefox. Let me just open up something else here. So you can see it does not go opaque when a window's maximized if you're using multi-monitor. So that was kind of a downer, which I only found out literally 2 minutes before I started recording when I plugged in my second monitor. So that's kind of a downer, but I'm sure it's just something, little bug that can be tweaked out. So anyways, let's move on to the applications, because I have things about the applications as well that are good and bad. So first off, the App Center. I've noticed in both this version with the official beta 1 and in the hacked together version that I was using before, that the App Center is very, very buggy. It works smoothly most of the time. For some reason, when you first install it and when you reboot, I think it has to do with if it's finding updates that you have available. It does a lot of stuff in the background, and it just kind of chokes on itself, and it won't let you install new software. It just freezes up, locks up completely. And I found that the best way to get it to work smoothly, if you have that problem, is I forced it to close, and I logged out, logged back in, and then I purposely ignored the App Center and waited for it to do its background stuff. I got the notification that there were updates, and then I waited another like 5 minutes. Then I opened it up, and I was able to install software, do the updates, and whatever. So that's one thing there that is a bit of an issue. But again, this is a beta, so we'll see. Next up, calculator, which is a standard calculator, and there's not really much to talk about here. Calendar. The calendar is nice. You can add your online calendars, your Google calendars and whatnot. So just add new calendar on this computer, or Google, or the CalDAV or iCal or whatever you want. But one thing that bugs me, being that they've focused very much on aesthetics and whatnot, is this should just be one button. Like this is very ugly. You have such a beautiful OS, everything is beautiful, but the calendar, which I understand not many people use, I use it a lot, and normally it's quite populated with things. I haven't done it here because this is just installed and just for review purposes, but there's no reason to have this month and year separate, because honestly, how often are you changing the year? Right? Like, this should be one thing. Very much like how other calendars, you'd click on the month and then it would, expand down and show you the entire year. That would be very nice to have, instead of these back and forth arrows and then a separate one for the year. But again, this is me now being picky. This is being bad review, I guess you could say. Next up is code. So code, I actually have something open here because I was looking at the sources for where it gets its updates. Code is okay. It's a text editor. However, I would have thought that when you open certain types of files that it would color it for you like many other editors do. I didn't try anything like Python or whatever, but just opening even the sources.list, many other editors will color it because it recognizes the comments, right? So the comments would be colored one way, this would be colored another way. So, but it is what it is. It's an editor. You can install whatever you want on here. So if you don't like it, get rid of it. And these, I think they should be in a settings menu, in a drop down. Having them up there it's not very appealing. But one cool thing about those, and while I'm mentioning it, I will mention it about the files manager as well. The file manager is not only are they buttons, but if you click and drag, it's also a handle. And same thing with here. If you click in here, then you can type away, right? But if you click and drag, it is a grab handle. So that's awesome, because in the previous version, you couldn't do that. You had to click in this little gray area or even on one of these buttons to drag it around. You lost this whole space to grab. So in 0.4 Loki, that was something that was a little bit annoying, was the small area you had to grab, but they fixed that now and you can grab the entire top area, which is awesome. That's the grab handles, and that is code. Next up, Epiphany. Epiphany, I'll be honest, I don't like. I don't know why they chose it, if it was aesthetics or whatnot. First thing I did, of course, was install Firefox, which is much more powerful, much more customizable, and takes up less screen space. So you can see I have side by side here. The tops of the windows are lined up, and the top of the web page on Firefox is slightly higher than on Epiphany. So personal choice there, I suppose. I would have personally installed Firefox, but Firefox is available. However, this brings me to my next point before I carry on with the applications. The applications center, the app center. If you type certain applications, they don't show up in the list. I don't know why. Like, I typed in Firefox and the only browser is Iceweasel. So, and it was the same thing with things like TLP, which I installed, so it shows up now. But there are certain things that you type and search for, and it says that it's not there. And it clearly is in the Ubuntu repositories, but for some reason, I don't know if they whitelist the applications or if they blacklist them or they create their own separate list of applications. But this App Center seems to somehow limit what you can install. It doesn't give you full choice over what you're able to install. And that's a little annoying. And being that a new user would really like to use Elementary, a new Linux user, because it is so simple. A Mac user would like to use Elementary, but there are so many apps that won't show up in the App Center, and I don't know why. I don't know if it's a mistake, if it's a bug, or if it's done on purpose because they don't want users running certain applications, which is very Apple of them. But the alternative is you could still do apt install Firefox in the terminal and it will still install it. I'm not going to do it because I already did install it, but you can still install everything in the terminal using apt, even if it doesn't show up in the app center. Alternatively, you can also install Synaptic and search for and install software that way. So moving on, files. So I covered files with the drag here, but there's a couple other things with files. Huge improvement is definitely the giant grab handle, but this tabs area here, I wish you could turn off, or I wish you could make it so that it was only visible if you had more than one tab, or even if it could be shrunk. I mean, it's 3 times as tall as it needs to be, and it takes up a lot of room. So I can just imagine on a lower resolution screen how much room this right here would be taking up. I don't like it, and I wish it was gone. But like many other applications in Elementary, you have no options to do anything. You can show hidden files, and you can change your view from icons to list to double, triple pane, whatever they call it. The pane kind of follows it along. And the next only thing you could do is if you hold Control and scroll up and down, you can change the folder icon size. But that's about it, because there are no settings. Oh yeah, and you can do, yeah, I think I just mentioned hidden files. You can also hit Control H to show them. But other than that, there are no options. There's nothing. There's no default settings. There's no nothing. And in fact, by default, when you single click, it will open a folder. I've changed it to double click, and I'll tell you how when I get to the system settings. So moving on, Firefox I of course installed because I don't like Epiphany. Moving on, Hackup is one of the applications that I tried to install just because I wanted to see what the paid apps were like. I'm not gonna trash the coder who made it or anything, but I just want to say that I was browsing through, I read it, and it was talking about how it's a nice distraction-free way of reading hacker news. And it is, for the most part, but there are, okay, well this is a bad example. There are a lot of websites where they're just plastered with ads and pop-ups and everything, and it looks a lot better if I'm browsing in my web browser with an ad blocker than this. So this one's not too bad. The ads are small, but you know, it can be bad. But anyways, so next up are apps that I installed myself. So Kdenlive, Krita, and all the LibreOffice applications. I installed those myself from the repository, and it's things that I was just testing out and see how they work. Mail is Genie, which is awesome. I really like Genie. I like using it. It's simple, it's lightweight, and the best thing is it's super easy. You just pick your mail type, your name, email address, password, and it will figure out all the server settings and all that stuff for you in the background. And it's a very nice, lightweight looking application, which can also be set to continuously check for mail even when you close it, and you get the nice little number pop up in the corner, very much like Mac, letting you know how many unread emails you have. So next up we have multitasking view. So let me just open a couple of things here and I'll show you what that is. It's just like the GNOME zoom out when you hit the Windows key or you hit the activities button. It just shows you all your applications here, and it lets you manage multiple desktops. Next up is the music player, which is a nice little simple music player. Works very well. It has a built-in equalizer. Looks sort of like iTunes. And it integrates into the volume control here. So when you start playing a file, you can actually even close it and it'll keep playing and you can control it from here. Then when you want to stop the music, you would just pause it from here, but I would open this up and then actually right click and say close. But it seems to kind of run in the background all the time, and it's by design. I guess if you're running low on RAM, that might be an issue, but it shouldn't be a problem for most people. So OBS, of course, I installed myself to record this, and Photos is okay. I haven't played with it too much because I don't really use these types of browsers, and I find that because I do have so many photos that adding libraries, it takes a long time to add libraries because there are so many photos and images and they're all organized into subfolders and whatnot. So I just use a file browser. The screenshot app is like any other screenshot app, so I'm not really going to get into it. If you know how to use one, you know how to use them all. System Monitor is the GNOME System Monitor. Did not come with Elementary. Elementary does not include a System Monitor at all, which I think is a little strange. System settings is something I'm going to cover separately, so I'm going to go back to that after. The terminal is very nice, as you saw earlier. They've added the option to change the colors, and to zoom in and out here. I use the keyboard shortcuts of Control plus and minus, which does the same thing. And I wish there was an option to turn off transparency by default. Would be nice. Would also be nice to be able to get rid of tabs, because if you're like me, you will never ever use tabs. So I would rather have multiple terminal windows open or tiled terminals. But again, something else that they don't give you the option for. Next application is videos, which works okay, but I found there was a little bit of stuttering sometimes, and the playback bar was not always accurate where you were clicking and where it was actually playing back. But that's just a widget, a decoration thing, and it's not really a deal breaker, but there's plenty of other video players if you need something like VLC, which I installed, but VLC I only installed because you need it for Kdenlive when you're editing. So that is it for the applications, everything that comes with it. Now, the system settings is something else that I want to go through. It's for the most part unchanged. You have your default applications, your startup applications. Desktop is basically your wallpapers. They don't include a ton of wallpapers. This beta one is the default. They're very nice, naturey. I wish they had other things other than nature and mix it up a little bit, but still very nice to look at, still very pretty. Dock options. You have your icon sizes and your different behaviors, but if you want more, you can hold Control, right click on any dock item and go to Preferences. Here you can customize more, like how it looks. You want it to be completely transparent, or do you want it maybe on the left or on the right? Because this is just a plank dock. It's not their own software. It has its own thing. So what they do is they added some of the basic features in here to modify, but you can still modify everything. Behavior, add docklets, you can still access that stuff. So good thing is they didn't take that away, but if you didn't know about that, you wouldn't be able to change any of these things. So it would be cool if they had a little button here that was like advanced options or something that would bring up this preferences window. Then you've got hot corners, which you can set to do various things, multitasking, show all windows, execute a custom command. That's basically if you stick your mouse in the corner of a screen, it will do something. I'm not a fan of hot corners. I don't know of anyone who uses hot corners. There are some people who use it, I'm sure. So there it is if you do like to use it. Language and region. This is something if you want to change your keyboard settings or languages. If you do multi-language, multi-keyboard, might be something handy for you to use. Not something I ever go into. Notifications I covered with the customizing of sounds and pop-ups. Security and privacy I like because you can turn off your history. If you turn on your history, you can choose specific things that you want remembered or not. Personally, I would like to have it disabled, and I like to keep it disabled. Locking is great for someone like me. I often put my laptop down, pick it up, and put it down, and every time I open the screen, I have to enter in my password, and it drives me crazy. Or my computer, I walk away and it puts itself to sleep or the screen turns off, and then I come back and it wants the password. Office setting out in public, yes, that's cool. At home or in my own office, I don't like that, so it's nice to have this option to turn it off. Firewall. Firewall is basic firewall, but again, for home stuff on a Linux system, being behind my internet firewall, I'm not too concerned about turning on a Linux firewall. I never have in however long. I've never been hacked, so not concerned about that. Location services you can turn on or off so that your different apps can find out where you are. If you're a privacy nut, disable it. Next in the settings is tweaks. This is something that you need to add. So if you Google elementary tweaks, there's a GitHub page that tells you how to install this from the terminal. So this is very much like GNOME tweaks, and you'll get the options here of choosing different themes because you're locked into the theme that you're given. The layout is something that I always change. You'll notice that I have a minimize, maximize, and close button on the right here, like Windows. By default, it's on elementary, which means your close button is here, your maximize button is here. This is how it is when you first install it, which I don't understand. It's kind of Mac-ish, but it's not. I don't know what has a maximize button here and a close button here, or why they would be on opposite sides, but you have in tweaks the option to change them, move them around in many different ways. I put it on Windows. I don't know why it's called Windows. I wish they just called it GNOME or Standard, or I don't know, because this isn't really Windows. GNOME Shell 3 is also like this. So call it what you want, but I'm used to this. I prefer this, and I wish you could change it out of the box, but again, something else they kind of lock you down to, which is, again, very Apple-like. Different settings, fonts, your animations. If you have a lower-end system or your animations are a little choppy, you can always turn that off. Miscellaneous is blank. It was blank when I installed it a few weeks ago as well. Under Files, here's where you can turn off the single-click option. I also turn off the restore tabs because when I first open the file manager, I want it to go to my home folder. I don't want all the tabs open to where I was before because that's not what I'm used to. And honestly, if I'm opening it, I don't want to spend a second figuring out where I am or whatever. So turn that off. It's nice to have. Again, something else I wish was an option by default. Launcher options here are blank. However, in the Loki version, and I assume in the final version when this is all working again, it gives you the option to change how many rows and columns you have and whatnot. A couple of little tweaks. Cerber, however you pronounce it, is a watchdog application. Again, it doesn't work in the beta. Hopefully will work eventually. And not saying that it's not working at all. I'm just saying that the tweaks cannot change it. Basically what it does is it's a service that runs and keeps an eye on certain applications to make sure they are running. If one of those applications crashes, it will restart it. So for example, one of them is the dock. If the dock were to ever crash, Cerber would restart it automatically without you having to figure out how to get to your terminal so that you can open it up again manually or whatever. It just takes care of making sure what needs to be running is indeed running. Terminal has a few little tweaks, and there's no way to disable transparency. There's custom background color, but again, like I was saying before, it would be nice to get rid of tabs. It would be nice to do a bit more with it, but you're kind of locked in. As I've said with a lot of these things where you're locked in, you can install any piece of software from the Ubuntu repositories. If you don't like how Files works, install Nautilus and then get rid of the shortcut or uninstall it completely. That's an option you can do as well. Under videos, stay on top while playing, move window from video canvas. Don't instantly start video playback. Again, things that could have easily been added in the video application itself. But like I've said, from everything else, there's no settings. There's nothing. They've kept it super, super simple and to the point where your hands are tied almost. So moving on. Hardware display. This works very well. By default, my secondary screen was on this side, but it's physically on this side, so I moved it over. There's no way to tell it which is the main display. Actually, there we go. This little star, which I never realized there was a difference until right now. So that changes your primary display. So that's pretty cool. So this works very well, and it was fairly easy to set up. I literally just dragged my screen over, hit apply, and that was it. It was done. There is a nightlight option here. It would be nice if there was a shortcut somewhere else, maybe under battery, like under the display brightness here. It would be nice to have nightlight. It's You're not going to see anything on the recording. It only shows up on the screen where it red shifts your screen, takes the blue light away, which makes it less harsh at nighttime. Next we go to keyboard layout. If you use a multilingual keyboard or you use different keyboards perhaps on the same machine, I don't know if people even do that, but I know that there are some people who make comments in the YouTube about different things that they use because they use a QWERTY Japanese keyboard and all these things that I know nothing of. And I guess it's very handy for some people. If you stick to one language, you're a unilingual person, then yeah, not so much. But anyways, mouse and touchpad is up next. This one, I wish they had one extra switch to just disable the touchpad. I hate touchpads. They drive me crazy. I always disable mine, and most distros have an option now where if a mouse is plugged in, the touchpad is automatically disabled. So I wish they had that, but for now, I basically just put pointer speed all the way down. That way, if I accidentally touch it, it doesn't move all over the place. The disable while typing sort of works, sort of not. The delay when it disables is very, very short. So if you pause for a second and your thumb's on it, it'll move the mouse and click somewhere else. But anyways, touchpad problems. Not everybody uses a laptop. Power, display brightness, all your standard stuff. Automatically adjust brightness. I have not been able to figure out what this does. I assume if you have a light sensor maybe on your laptop that it will automatically brighten and dim the screen. It does nothing on any of my laptops, and I turned it on yesterday late in the evening when it was quite dark. It was almost midnight, and this did nothing. So it's not according to your location. It's not according to sunrise, sunset. I can only assume it's only if your laptop has a sensor. So moving on, printers. Printers bothers me because most other apps, I can click search for new printer and it finds my printer. I have two of them. One is plugged into my network. One is on Wi-Fi, and I can always find my LaserJet the easiest because it's plugged straight into the network via Ethernet. And usually my Canon that's on Wi-Fi, I can find that easily as well. The Brother LaserJet printer always pops up first, and then the Canon shows up after. But with this, I tried all this, and it wants me to enter addresses and whatnot. All this does is it brings up a list of models. So it wants me to type in an IP or whatever to get to my printer, which is fine. I know the IPs for my printer. I know how to connect to them. But with other distros, I click add printer, they show up, it's done. It installs the driver, the Guten print or whatever it needs, and off we go. But with this, it wants you to do manual stuff, type in stuff manually. And I mean, pretty sure even with Ubuntu 18.04, I was able to just add my printers and they showed up when it searched. I didn't have to type in any URL or IP address or anything like that. So, you know, this definitely needs to be improved. It's 2018. We shouldn't be typing IP addresses to add printers. We should be clicking add network printer, and it goes, this one? You go, yes, and then off you go. So very disappointed with that. And because I do use my printers both here and at work, and I don't want to be messing around with IPs and whatnot, I don't think I would use this. It seems like it's very, very dated, very old. I wouldn't even try to add the printers, to be honest. I know that's being harsh, but Linux has been really crappy with printers for a long time. It's been getting very good lately, so much better in the last couple of years. So when there's a distro that is way behind still, I'm like, no, you're still using the like 2000s type setup. So just no. Anyways, moving on. Sound. Sound is your standard sound. There's nothing too special here other than input volume. The 100% mark is here, and then there's a little bit extra, which is like a over amplification, I guess. But I find it weird because being at this maximum is the same when I'm looking at my VU bars on my other monitor. It is the same level as putting it at 100% on other distros. So I don't know if other distros have changed or their 100% is just lower than what 100% really is. I don't know. Not sure. Doesn't matter. Moving on. Bluetooth and wireless is your standard Bluetooth. Network is your standard network. Online accounts. I'm skipping over this stuff because this is all stuff that is in most distros. Is very much the same, so I'm not going to bother. Online accounts, something I've always hated, that always breaks and doesn't work very well. I don't do this stuff. I don't want to be constantly linked to any online accounts. Sharing is just media sharing over your local network. About is just your about screen with your different system information and OS information. Date and time, parental control, universal access, and user accounts. The only thing I would ever touch, and most people would ever touch, I guess, is the user accounts. You can hit your unlock and then choose login automatically, change your password, change your user type, if you want to be an administrator or just a regular old user. That pretty much covers all the applications, and it covers all the system settings, and that covers all of elementary pretty well. I wish they would have included some sort of a backup solution by default. It would have been nice to have something pop up and say, hey, let's set up a backup for you. But at the same time, it would also be nice if they included some type of system monitor, but they didn't. So maybe this review was a little bit harsh, but it's only because this is a very, very specific distro where you're kind of being forced into their design and their way of things. And I keep bringing up Apple and Mac because using this just obviously, just by the looks alone, with the dash on the bottom and the stuff on the top, just the looks alone is screaming Mac clone. And then on top of that, the way that you're kind of forced into their app center and how their apps work and how nothing has settings, everything is so simplified, and they want you to do these things their way, and they're not giving you the option to do it another way. Those who know better, open up the terminal and be like, you know what, screw that. I don't like this, so I'm just going to install Nautilus. So you can just go ahead and do that, and then you can use Nautilus, because you could say, I don't like this. It has no options. I don't like how it looks. I don't like whatever your problem is with it. And then you just go ahead and install whatever else you like. Those who don't know, I mentioned before that I would install this on a system for my wife. That would be perfect. For your wife, your kids who aren't that familiar with Linux, this will be good. One thing I would recommend is your system settings, add the elementary tweaks so that you can add your window controls on this side, because I pretty much guarantee that's what they're going to be used to. And then you're set. You can let them play, and everything's here. You won't need like terminal and everything whatnot, but for something like that, it would be great. It would be simple. They wouldn't be overloaded with all these different settings and whatnot. For an novice, not even novice, yeah, it average, even a novice Linux user who's been using Linux for a while, they're going to look for these settings and they're going to wonder where they are. How do they change this? How do they change that? Because that's what you do with Linux. You customize it. You make it your own. You tweak it. So, there we go. Files. I was going to say it was hidden. Just like how I added GNOME tweaks tools, right? So this is the GNOME version, which lets me add middle click minimize. So when you middle click a window, it minimizes it. So it doesn't show up in the menu, which is kind of funny. So they do seem to hide certain things that they don't want people to use. So anyways, if it's a different way, someone can explain it to me, but explain it like an adult, please. Don't get all in a hissy and then start bashing everything and then thumbs down the video. Explain yourself like an adult. Let's not have a repeat of what happened last time. All right. Anyways, so yeah, Nautilus. So I installed Nautilus and there we go. Nice and clean. No big fat tabs bar there. See, there you go. That looks nice. So my other locations are here, which are here over here. Just a different way of doing things. And then I have all these settings. Look at that. I have preferences. Look at that. I can change all kinds of things in here. So this is cool. So if you don't like something that Elementary does, add another piece of software that will do it how you like it. So that's my review. That might be a little harsh, but it is what it is. What can you do? Anyways, do I like it? Yes, I do. It's very pretty. But at the same time, no, I don't, because it's too much like Apple and it's too far away from Linux and what Linux is supposed to be. But yes, I do if it's for a family member or a friend who's not too familiar with Linux. So it definitely has its ups and downs, its pros and cons. And my question to you is, do you use it? Have you used it? And what do you think about it? Are you a new Linux user who just loves it, or you're an old Linux user who loves it, or maybe you hate it for the same reasons because you're so locked down and you can't customize? Let me know in the comments down below, and we'll get to the bottom of this. I don't think I'm the only one who thinks like this, but very much on the fence of if I would use this as a daily or not. And one last thing I wanted to mention, actually, that I almost forgot, was that I have an old HP Pavilion laptop. Oh, it's old. It's maybe 3 years old. And it's just a low-end generic laptop. And for some reason, if I tilt the laptop sideways, the whole screen rotates. But it'll rotate in a different direction, like upside down. So I don't know if it's picking up some kind of gyro that is in the laptop, because this laptop doesn't do that with any other operating system. I've only noticed it with Elementary, where I tip it and it just flips the screen around. And if I tip it in a different direction, it flips it around. It doesn't always flip it right side up. It'll flip it in a weird way. So it'll flip 180 or 90 degrees left or right. And I've never noticed that before. I didn't know this laptop even had a gyroscope in it, or accelerometer, or whatever you want. And I don't know how to disable it. So I think that's really weird. I just kind of said, oh, okay, and then shut it off because I didn't even know where to start. So anyways, if you've experienced that, let me know that as well. Anyways, I want to give a special thanks to my executive producers who support me over on patreon.com. Carl Schneider, George Maris, Matt Hartley, Kit Waltz, and Says. Thank you so much, guys. If you would like to have your name up on the wall and support my channel to help me bring content to the Linux community, head on over to patreon.com/dorian.slash. Thanks a lot for watching, guys, and until next time, bash on.